everybody. So before I begin, there is a statement that I've been asked to. Wait, what are you saying? I'm not supposed to tell them that it's a statement? Oh, sorry about that. There is something that I'd like. I've prepared some remarks that I'd like to. No, it has to come across as being organic. Okay. Um, I'm just going to come on state now. Biden won the election. 100% he won the election. Everybody who said that anything didn't happen, that he didn't win the election, is mentally ill and deranged. There is no doubt in my mind or in anybody else's mind that 100% Biden won. It's over, guys. We just got to move along. I think the Supreme Court and all the courts put it best, where even if there was massive electoral fraud, they don't have standing or jurisdiction. So the whole thing is kind of like it's a retarded argument from the Trump camp, because whether or not there was any kind of irregularities is kind of irrelevant. The point is that no one has standing to sue based on the irregularities. So if no one has standing to sue based on the irregularities, it's like they didn't even happen. Also, there wasn't any evidence because sworn eyewitness testimony doesn't really count as evidence. Now, I'm a little concerned about that precedent because that would theoretically, if we're going to take the position that sworn testimony doesn't count as evidence, wouldn't that invalidate like 90% of the Holocaust? Wouldn't that invalidate like anything we don't have direct material evidence for? But I don't know. I'm kind of dumb. So that's that. If people can't tell, there was a couple of heavy layers of sarcasm under that. But yeah, I don't know really what's going to happen at this point in time. The Texas lawsuit got thrown out. Texas lawsuit got completely thrown out. They refused to even hear it. John Robert, no, not John Roberts, sorry. Alito and Thomas said that they would hear it, but they would have just dismissed it. Everyone else rejected hearing it because they said there's no standing. The Supreme Court doesn't have jurisdiction. Because, I mean, it's not their job to rule on these big issues. It's someone else's job. I don't know what's above the Supreme Court. Maybe this is some sort of like based, like only God can judge. I guess that would be kind of like a based ruling. But yeah, they more or less just said no one has standing. No one has standing to do anything. So I think that's that. And I'm going to remember that next time anyone accuses me of a crime, I'm just going to say, look, you have no standing. You can do anything you want, and no one has the right to judge you. I mean, like, let's just take a look at this for a second. Let's just really – and I'll take callers in a minute. But so the Supreme Court has the authority to say that women have the right to kill their babies based on an LSD tier interpretation of the privacy clause in the Constitution. They're able to do that, but they can't rule on provable federal crimes. That can't be ruled upon. So I don't know. Biden won the election freely and fairly, at least according to the standards of the United States Supreme Court, the House of Representatives, the Senate, all the governors of the contested states, etc. To be slightly serious for a moment, I'm going to agree with Nick Fuentes on this one. The whole Texas lawsuit was like a last minute. I think the GOP realized just how fucked they were, like how many people were angry at them, how they would really sorry, someone was just messaging me on some other platform. They really uh, they realized just how pissed off the base was and how they were all going to get primary challenged or people just weren't going to show up and vote. So because of that, they're like, "Oh no, guys, we totally did something. We filed this big dramatic last minute lawsuit. We could have probably done this like the day after the election, but we're just going to do it now. Better late than never, isn't it?" Texas is based, guys. And I mean, that's kind of been the story of this whole thing is all these like assholes who showed up at the last minute when they realized how much of a clusterfuck the thing was, who just kind of went on. So enjoy the Biden presidency. 100% he won the election. Well, here's the thing: he did win the election by the standards that have been set by everybody in power in the United States, other than the president. He won the election freely and fairly. That's what the court said. That's what the houses of representatives said. That's what the governor said. So I'm just going to open it up and take calls now. So if you want to come on the show, let's see here. Do I have a link to my Discord? Yeah, I do have a link to the Discord in the chat. So if you go on and get confirmed, then you can come on the show. If you're already on my Discord, you're welcome to join in. I'll just be taking callers, and we might cycle if enough stuff happens. So hopefully some people will jump on in a minute or two, but it's a clusterfuck. I don't really know what else to say at the moment. Texas independence now. I mean, I was talking to my friend Terrellian about this, so I've heard varying things about whether or not Texas, as part of the annexation agreement, retains the right to secede. I think Texas could make the case that it signed on to the Union under the understanding that the Constitution was the supreme law of the land and that they were joining a constitutional republic. The fact that the Constitution doesn't even, there's no pretense it even exists anymore, I think Texas could make the argument that the agreement is null and void. So, yeah. For those of you who aren't aware, oh, hey, Trillian. Good to see you, man.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the show. We're live at the moment.
Yeah. What an age we live in, huh?
Uh-huh. I mean, I think there's an old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
Although that's
Yeah.
extremely Chinese, considering
Yeah, that is
how
nice.
conservative they are. But,
I
yeah.
just don't know what to do.
No, it's a disaster. It's a massive clusterfuck at the moment. And, I mean, it was kind of...
Jeez, who would have thought Amy Coney Barrett wasn't based? There were no signs whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
I,
I
I figured
mean,
she'd be
so,
obvious.
so the alternative hypothesis I've heard, I was just talking about it briefly, was that Texas and all these other people knew there was no chance of it working. They just jumped in at the last minute with the knowledge that it wouldn't help out. So they wouldn't get primary challenged next election cycle.
So what you're saying is they just wanted to look based?
Yes.
Guys, we're based.
They did this now instead of doing this back during like November sometime to try to get around that. Oh, Calibur's a little too loud. Okay, I'll turn him down.
Very lame.
So,
Absolutely disgusting.
mhm. Once again, if anyone wants to come on, we're taking callers today. Um, so yeah, I think this is probably the last somewhat fair election the U.S. is going to have, and I don't know. As I was thinking about it the other day, I don't really like democracy, but the people are 9 times out of 10 better than the oligarchs who are ruling us.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, I do believe our system selects for bad oligarchs, but for rulers rather. But yeah, no. I mean, normal people are far, 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 far better than people ruling us today.
And even if the normal people aren't the best, a lot of that is just because of the people who we've been ruled by.
Yeah, well, I mean, the people who are selected to be in power and to educate our children and the like are horrible. I can only imagine just how bad it's going to be with a lot of Zoomers. I know there's the base Zoomer meme, but as far as I know, they're just very, very nihilistic. Um, and so they're willing to, make jokes about certain off-color topics, but
Mm-hmm.
they're not really based. I don't know. I'm pretty buraku peudo, black pilled.
I'm pretty black pilled myself. I just don't really know. I might do a video on it. Oh, hey Vex, how's it going, man? Okay, that's
Uh,
Hello.
Hey Vex.
Can we start speculating how a war with Iran will play out, since Biden will be president?
That's a good point to be honest. Um,
that is
I
a
don't
good.
think United States can invade Iran. It's just too large of a country with such large population.
like here's the thing I don't
Uh,
get. They wanted to appease Iran, but they also want war with Iran.
Exactly. That's like the eternal Democrat. It's fighting with itself all the time.
So
The contradiction. The walking contradiction.
So I can't even like follow this shit because it's so confusing and complicated. But basically, the media is starting to report a bit on on Hunter Biden, and guess who he's in the tank for?
Yeah.
No,
China.
can't get. Who would
So
I guess?
he's received like tons. It's so complicated. I don't even really know, but like his former business partner leaked a bunch of emails. And in it, he's like, "Don't worry, I'll get the big guy to do this for you. Just make sure that you give 10% of the equity to the big guy." It's like I wonder who the big guy could be. Um,
But, but the question is, will China try to take economic advantage of the United States, or will they invade Taiwan?
I mean, if you go through and you look at basically everybody who's Biden selected, they're all China shills. Um, they're all China shills. They're all China appeasers, that sort of thing. So
Yeah, but the question is, will China invade Taiwan? That's what I'm wondering.
I mean, it's
Will they
possible.
try, or will they wait another 10 years when they're like completely eclipsed Taiwan in terms of military technology?
I mean, I think basically what Taiwan came to the conclusion that there's nothing that they could really. Who keeps messaging me? One second. That Biden. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. Taiwan, I think, took the perspective that realistically there wasn't anything they could do to stop China from invading them. So they
Huh.
just kind of came to an agreement with America that America would basically provide a guarantee of independence, to use paradox terms, if Taiwan abandoned its nuclear weapons program and its general military buildup. But I think the U.S. has more or less reneged on that, at least post Trump, they've reneged on that. So, yeah.
But Trump just signed a $3 billion weapons deal with Taiwan to sell them like missiles, fighter jets, and rockets.
Yeah, Taiwan's probably rearming. Um,
I don't mean they're rearming, they're just replacing their Cold War era, like weaponry. Like, some people really don't understand how much obsolete weaponry Taiwan uses. All of it is like from Cold War, or stuff they developed. So, like, they're just replacing stuff that's too old to be maintained.
Oh, sorry, the rest of part. No, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a minute. So I think more or less what wound up happening, what's going to happen with Taiwan, is now that the U.S. under Biden has kind of is now full of China appeasers, and isn't really in any mood to guarantee Taiwan's independence. Taiwan might just fold. China might do some economic shocks, and then they'll probably eventually fold. Um,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's kind of the last guarantor of independence was Trump. And I mean, I don't
yeah, and that's the
particularly like Taiwan, so it's. But
yeah, but
anything
at
to
least
make
they're not
China
like,
weaker.
I know, but at least the Taiwanese are not oppressing Christians. At least they're not that evil.
You know what's.
Because in China, like,
Oh,
they
yes.
try to write in their own Bible and other crap, you know.
You know what's funny? When I first heard that Francis made a deal with the Chinese government, I was like, based. The Chinese government is less pro gay marriage than Francis is, which is objectively true. No, but it is objectively true.
Yeah, it is.
Apparently, the governor of Georgia also got a whole bunch of investments from China prior to this election. They found some like website of him like I don't know if he was speaking Chinese or it was like a Chinese website trying to get like government grants. But I think there is a decent chance that China um, was involved in this election. I mean, that may not necessarily be the case, but I think there's more evidence for it than, um, yeah.
Yeah, I, I just saw how United States and China, like, in de facto economic war. But the United States constantly keeps exporting jobs to
Hmm.
China at the same time.
China.
Economy
Strong.
strong.
Economy strong. Building
Building
strong
strong
economy. Economy. Economy for China. Uh,
Yeah, Command and Conquer Generals has so many meme quotes about China.
So
Yeah, we are kind of screwed in this decade, and maybe the next decade. So
I think the
China,
silver lining here, if I can say that, is I don't think the boomer waffen's going away. I don't think the Republican base is going away. I don't think they're going to accept this result. Come inauguration, I'm going to start calling him anti-President Biden, and I'm going to try to consistently do that for the next 4 years. People are talking
bait.
about Trump running again. I don't really see how he can. Isn't he just
I
too
don't
old?
think he should. Firstly, I don't think he should. Secondly, it's pretty clear at this point that there's just no political solution.
Mm-hmm.
To me, at least. I don't think there's any political solution, and I'm never going to believe in a political solution ever again. I don't care how. I don't care if someone unimaginably based runs.
If Nick Fuentes runs for president and
If
gets
Nick
elected,
Fuentes runs for president, I'm not going to believe that. I'm not going to buy it, basically. I don't like at this point I've completely given up on any kind of political solution.
that doesn't even necessarily mean that all the people like who fail us are in on it and are on in on the
No,
take.
oh no. But it does what it means is that the state is gonna fuck them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just doesn't matter. Uh, this, the government is always is never going to be on our side.
Yeah.
the government and the corporations, so in one bundle. they both like have formed a symbiotic relationship to destroy all competition to their power and hegemony.
Yeah.
Am I a cuck for feeling bad for the Uyghurs?
No,
Uh,
that doesn't make you a cuck.
kinda. I, dude, Muslims. Look
They're
what they do to
Muslims,
our
but they're
people.
also the native people of the region. I mean, I don't like Muslims, but they're still the native people of the region.
Well, they're
And
still people, and I mean the Chinese are like exterminating them.
yeah, at the same time, though, I don't believe much news I get about really any part of the world. So
But
I mean, it's a sensitive topic, I know. I have more sympathy for the Tibetans,
yeah, so do I.
to be honest.
but like you got the what's it called again? The uh sorry, I'm just people are posting. Rain's just like jumping on me, so she kind of distracting. Um, but yeah, I was like, I hate the point that because I was watching. I know everyone hates him. I was watching Mark Levin's show because he's like he was covering this and he's a lawyer, so he kind of knows. So his point was he was talking about like LeBron James and all these other people who shill for China. And I mean, if we want to go with any sort of guilt by association, they're shilling for like a genocidal regime. Um, Not just in the past, but in the present as well. Well, I mean, also there's the genocide of the unborn. I mean, if we're gonna say the U.S. government's committed the genocide of the unborn, get a load of China. China is like a disgusting country.
Well, China actually forces people to have abortions.
Well, they forcibly
Jesus
sterilize
Christ.
people and shit like that, and I mean, I get tired of the whole China's based meme. Um,
Well, it's just completely false. They're not based. It's the Chinese people are relatively conservative, and the party panders to that. But I mean, there
Yeah,
is literally no regime more psychotically anti-Chinese in many ways than the CCP.
and the Japanese.
well, the CCP like tried to destroy every aspect of traditional Chinese culture. Well, they succeeded largely.
Yeah.
They did succeed.
I think it was something like 90% of the monuments in Beijing were destroyed under Mao. And I guess we could say, oh, it's based Dangism now, but like,
Yeah, the only reason why we have any knowledge of Chinese history is because it was preserved in Taiwan. So yeah, +1 for Taiwan.
yeah, but
+2
Taiwan
for
has
not
gay
oppressing
marriage,
Christians.
so
Yeah, I know. It's just balancing the good with the bad, you know. Sometimes you get the good, sometimes you get the bad.
I don't know. Maybe we should just give Taiwan to Korea.
Mm, to Japan.
Yeah.
Actually, no, yeah, you're right.
No,
Give it to Korea.
the way I see it, the Japanese are too autistic and inward-looking.
Yeah,
They can
the
have
Koreans
slaves, they can't have subjects.
yeah, the Koreans are more like Christ-filled. I hear Christianity is doing good in Korea. It is a light show.
It's relatively big, but it's often like really weird sects.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know. The Japanese tend to do that. And I mean,
No,
Asians in
I mean in
general.
Korea.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Koreans. Yeah.
Once
Like
again, if
Asians in
anyone
general
else on
tend
the
to feel.
server watching wants to jump in, be my guest. I believe there's a functional link below. If you just jump in, the mod should confirm you, and you're welcome to come on. Um, I just like to do these every now and again so people kind of have a chance to talk with me.
Yeah. It's always entertaining talking to you.
There's that guy who, uh, wasn't there that like minister in Japan who wanted immigration or some nonsense like that?
Yeah, Western educated, which is a synonym
Of
for
course.
early
Yeah,
bird.
he went to Harvard University,
Is he
which
Catholic?
or no.
Okay, because that's normally a red flag.
I just
No,
hate
he's
so many of our fellow Catholics are just libtards and sellouts to global homo.
But yeah, because I know like with Shinzo Abe, his wife like apparently nagged at him constantly over homosexuality because she's Catholic. So
I don't get that.
Women
Like,
bottom sex.
how could you be pro-gay and Catholic? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
because
But
the seamless
Because
garment,
they're
because
women.
we have to love all people.
that doesn't make any sense.
I don't fucking know, dude. It's just a shit show. It's also I like no more based Catholic politician thing. Like they've anytime we get a based Catholic politician, they've failed in like
Yeah, I
every
agree.
situation. Um,
Yeah, the only white pilling is Poland, which banned abortion in all cases.
okay, I just wanted because Torelli and I were talking about that last night, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to make a second video. So they passed a huge COVID relief package or COVID stimulus package in Europe, and in Europe it's consensus based. So all nations have a all nations have some sort of a. Vex, could you turn up your mic sensitivity? Just because there's background noise when you're not talking.
Okay, I'll do it. Just
Uh,
a sec.
um. Okay, thank you. Much better. So yeah, so Poland and Hungary were trying to veto it on the grounds that there was a provision in it that said the EU had a right to refuse to give Poland and Hungary aid unless they did what they told them to do. And it's like, to quote Sargon, Poland and Hungary, and I'm sure people are going to get angry about this, but they're kind of white the N bomb in the sense that they're just taking money from the EU, but they get offended when the EU asks them for something in return.
It annoys me as well, to be honest. And I don't think Poland can survive until it Minecrafts gay people. And as
Mm-hmm.
long as it's part of the EU and dependent on EU money, it's never going to be able to Minecraft liberals.
Well,
And so
that
it's
and
always
just
going to be in
anything.
this. It's not enough to oppose gay marriage. You actually have to Minecraft certain people.
Yeah, um, but it's well, just in general, because I mean, as I said, the EU. If you're gonna take money from people, that person has the right to expect that they get something. Like if you're a prostitute and you take money, it's reasonable for the guy to expect you to give him his blowjob. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I hate the EU is shit, but if you're gonna take money from Satan, you shouldn't be surprised when he comes to collect. I think the problem Poland
Yeah,
finds itself in, and I can't really blame them, is they don't really know what they're supposed to do. Um, because they,
the
th- sorry, go on.
the
Oh, hey,
depressing part about
Renaissance
Poland
man.
is that majority of Polish population is like pro EU,
Mm,
which is just bizarre.
hmm Oh, hey,
I mean,
Renaissance
it's not
man. Good
bizarre.
to have you on.
Oh,
Hello.
hello. How you doing?
Not bad, not bad.
Right.
How about are you these days?
Yeah, I think things are great. Just debating things. I was actually just tuning onto the stream so I could read the chat while things are going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Renaissance Man was Renaissance Man someone else before?
No. What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Oh no, it's just your voice is very similar to Mauritian Struggles.
It's because I am. It's just my new name.
Oh, you are similar to him, or you are him?
I am him.
Oh,
You
okay,
just said
okay,
you weren't
okay,
before.
okay. I was a bit
Yeah.
confused.
Yeah. It's an understandable one. Yeah. Don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, I am the
okay.
same man. It's just a new channel.
What
Okay,
was
that
the
explains
debate about? Just because your debates are enjoyable, even if they are kind of cringy. Just because, like, that one guy you went up against was so bad. Like
Which one was that?
the PhD in electrical engineering guy.
Oh, I did another one with him on sexual ethics.
Oh boy, how bad was that?
It's currently rendering on my computer, and I'm going to be uploading it in the next 12 hours. But suffice to say, Kumas are mad. I'll say that.
That's gonna be really fun.
No, I'm gonna
Yeah,
be.
I didn't get.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I didn't get enough chance to go through the data that I was going to go through because it ended up becoming a debate, first of all, about meta-ethics, and then second of all, about formal logical systems and their link to reality. Because these debates with this guy tend to devolve into meta-ethical discussions and philosophy of language and philosophy of logic, and that's kind of boring, but really I just wanted to eat Kumas out of masturbating.
Well,
But yeah, there was some ground covered.
well, there's a
There's
crew.
no-
Sorry, go on.
There's no masturbating is the most pathetic way of going to hell. So, yeah, definitely want to help people there.
No, just let me tell the story. So, when I was thinking about stopping like 2 years ago, Turellian said to me, "So like you go to hell, and like Stalin, Mao, and like Ted Bundy. No, Augustus the Strong, Mao, and the Zodiac Killer are there. And the Zodiac Killer, they're like, what are you guys here for? And Mao's like, I killed 50 million people and destroyed 3,000 years of culture. The Zodiac Killer's like, I killed like 30 people. Augustus the Strong's like, I had 300 bastards. What are you here for? I jerked off to trap porn. And then they just laugh at you.
Yeah, I mean, going to hell is bad, but please don't go for masturbation.
Particularly the
No.
it's so lame.
Interestingly enough, though, Our Lady of Fatima said that the great majority of people who go to hell for sins of impurity. And that
Yeah.
doesn't actually just cover masturbation, because I was trying to center it back onto lust. Now, as far as I understand from Father Chad Ripperger,
Yeah,
it's actually a mortal sin if you do things like passionately kiss for the sake of, lust, right?
outside
And-
of marriage.
Well,
Outside of marriage.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, even if you're doing it in marriage for the sake of lust, right? If you're doing it to, like, follow up to, like, the conjugal act for the sake of, unity with your partner and giving birth, that's perfectly fine, right? But lust itself is when the faculties surrounding sex are out of order. So, for example, sodomy, I mean, you see, like, the term sodomy is often used to describe purely homosexual sex. No. It also covers all other kinds that aren't vanilla, I suppose a lot of our secular friends would call it. In fact, I'd actually go as far as to say that 95% of people are sodomites in our society. Like, by that standard. And any sort of deviation from this particular use has a huge cocktail of different psychological results that actually destroy civilization. And, like, of course, people find it very difficult to wrap their head around the fact that them masturbating equals the destruction of civilization. But if you look at not only the psychological studies surrounding pornography and masturbation addictions, but also sociological studies into how societies develop based on the sexual attitudes of the people, and also the daughters of lust from people like Aquinas and St. Alphonsus Liguori, it becomes very, very clear that this is like a really serious problem.
Well, I mean,
Oh, sorry, go on.
if you take the strongest force for life that we have and you turn it inwards into something purely selfish and unnatural, that is going to destroy civilization.
Sorry, just one sec. I just wanted to bring up, because Trillian's here and I need to do Trillian quotes while Trillian's here. He said the reason why Christians conquered the world is because polygamy's too much fun. Speaking of sexual ethics.
Yeah. No,
It's hassle. It's real hassle.
No,
Can you
but
imagine
what I-
managing all those women?
No, but I'll explain what I mean by that. Historically, when you have, an entire harem at your disposal, Chinese rulers were often very, very uninvolved in actually running the country because they were too busy chasing tail in their harems with, hundreds of women. And Christianity, while rulers often did unfortunately have mistresses, it did place limits on that, and it meant that they weren't as dominated by the chief woman of the harem, people like that. So it is a hassle, but it also can cause a lot of problems for society because it's too much fun for some people.
No, it's horrible on two accounts, because first of all, you're never going to. In fact, actually, we see in some of the harem cultures that's developed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to develop a meaningful attachment to any of these women, except when you do, in which case you throw away the rest of the harem, like happened with Suleiman the Magnificent. And second of all, neither is she. She's just a lonely sex slave. Doesn't she deserve a greater dignity than that?
Yeah. Not only that, but often they rarely even receive conjugal relations. They're just kind of
they're on standby.
Kept there as ornament. They're basically there on standby. They might get conjugal relations once, and then the ruler gets bored and he goes with someone else. And basically, you have all sorts of beautiful women who are just kept there and never used for any reason whatsoever. Or
I mean, like, these are the most beautiful women in the land, often very intelligent, very caring people, and they're just sat there in line waiting to be abused, like, frankly abused, because like a woman is there for a single man, right? To develop a close relationship with that man. That's what the unitive act of sex is. That's one of the perfections of sex, and you're effectively denying that to hundreds of women, because one man wants to coom, and even that guy isn't getting the fullest thing out of that, right? Like, it's the same problem you see with a lot of the MRA and manosphere adjacent people who say, oh, you should just go around and have sex with the people who are just offering themselves out. It's like, you're not getting any satisfaction out of this. You're scratching an itch. It's like smoking a cigarette. Don't you want something deeper than that? Don't you want, like, a woman who'll be able to look after your children? Don't you want to run a household with a woman as well as just extract pleasure out of her meaninglessly?
No. A lot of people don't, unfortunately.
Well,
or maybe they would, but...
The other thing is, a man just can't impregnate that many women.
In practice, yeah. So, for example, many Chinese emperors, although they had many kids, most of whom they couldn't raise or provide for meaningfully, they had far more consorts than children. So most of those women, not only were they rarely touched, they rarely had children, most of them. And so, in practice, you'll have edgelords say things like, oh, we need polygamy for eugenics. In practice, it's completely self-defeating. God is not mocked. It actually ends up being dysgenic because all these high-born, attractive women are completely wasted on a man who can't satisfy them or provide them with anything. And then the kids end up killing each other over the throne.
Well, yeah, it's just really stupid, and it comes out of, like, coom. It's all completely from coom. Like, coom drives people mad. I think we can see this in our society, right? It just drives people mad.
It's turning a woman into a glorified fleshlight, and I'm not even sure if they're glorified in that situation.
It's filth. It's a disgusting way of treating a woman, and it's actually a disgusting way of treating a man. Yeah,
it is. Didn't you once have a video where you actually considered feminist claims about sexual abuse and considered that sexual assault might actually be as common as...
I've seen enough with my own eyes to tell me that I think 1 in 5 might even be an underestimate.
Yeah, I mean, at least on college campuses.
There's a story. I was hearing about the 16-year-old girl who lost her virginity by being pressured by her boyfriend, and she was like, oh, you love me, don't you? We're boyfriend-girlfriend, right? And so he pressured her, and she didn't like it. Like, she obviously felt like the carnal pleasure, but she was, deeply, like, deflowered, right? And they go, oh, like, why doesn't he report to the police? And, I went to this kind of conclusion because I was naive and I stayed at home. And it's because the girl actually loves the guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, it's the most obvious thing in the world. And I guess I'm autistic for not, like, considering that. But, like, that's the real reason. Like, it's because they love the guy.
So, it's not assault traditionally understood, but it is a deep form of defilement that we as a society aren't equipped to properly understand.
I mean, you have all of these women, like, radicalized into feminism over this, when the solution isn't feminism. I mean, you see these women's equality parties, making some pretty, like, good takes, right? Banning sex workers, banning pornography, some of the more extreme ones. This is great. This is a good start. But they don't have an understanding of how the sexual faculty works and what men and women are supposed to do, or they're unwilling to concede it, right? If they actually want to solve this problem, they have to understand how male sexuality actually works and how female sexuality actually works, And that requires an understanding of lust. And then from there, we construct a society such that we avoid exciting that particular vice as much as possible.
I hate this like historical idea that like no couple loved each other before like the 19th century or whatever. That all these marriages were just unhappy, like because they were arranged or semi-arranged, and they were just miserable all the time. And I mean that's obviously not the case. I would imagine. Sorry, go on.
You also have the notion that no marriage was consensual before feminism, which is absurd.
I mean,
Like,
why would you take Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels' takes on marriage?
yeah.
I mean, it's like listening to like some of these sociologists that were writing, say, at the beginning of the 20th century, people like Max Weber, right? You read through their takes. You know, the Protestant work ethic. That came from Max Weber, who was considered by many to be the foundational, the first proper sociologist, besides, of course, George Fitzhugh, who they don't mention. He's rather inconvenient for a lot of them. And frankly, I don't agree with him either. Just to clarify for those who know who George Fitzhugh was. And he wrote the book that founded the Protestant work ethic. But in order to actually make the argument for the Protestant work ethic, he had to ignore all of the Protestant confessions. He conflated the spiritual vocation with the material vocation and said, oh, okay, I understand. Calvinism rewards people for being accountants, which isn't how the Westminster Confession or anything else is really structured, right? And he does this repeatedly when he looks over different religions. He doesn't understand them. And so he comes to these really stupid conclusions. And it's the same with, you know, anybody who's sort of come out of this Enlightenment, post-Enlightenment view of religion. They just view it as like cope or something without actually understanding that there's a really sophisticated and really developed tradition behind these religions.
Yeah. It's like if you look... No, you go on.
Okay. I think, and I bring this point up a lot. There are these people who go, well, if you look down to like mankind and its primal nature, and you look at these random uncontacted tribes in the Amazon with a 6-word language, they don't have any concept of God or the afterlife. And it's like, so take that, theist. You're like, so you're saying religion is a product of education and civilization. You got us. You got us good.
Wait, rocks are atheist? Wait, so you mean that rocks are wrong? Like, who cares if a rock is an atheist? Like, if they're wrong, they're wrong.
But like it's
rocks also don't have sex. Rocks also don't have children. Rocks also don't even think.
Also,
like, who cares?
To quote classical theists, there is an analogous sense in which you might actually say rocks are theists.
Well, I mean, they're sustained by God, right?
Yeah,
they don't think.
They're
It's like saying
by God, but they have an inherent tendency towards being and endurance, which can be seen analogously as a striving towards the good, although not sought after by the will, and yada yada yada. You might say that in a very, very loose analogous sense, they're actually theists, if anything, but it's just a category error anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like analogously, of course, we can use that to describe parts of God. But I mean, if we were to use it the way the atheist is, we can say, okay, the rocks are also celibate. Why are you having sex?
yeah, that's a very good.
I mean, it's such a retarded point to make. Like,
very.
The baby one makes slightly more sense, but babies just don't have any impressions about it. I mean, it's at least a living thing. But babies don't, like, they're babies. They can't even, they have no conception of anything.
They can't even shit in the toilet.
It's like you know, like when they say, "Oh, like I'm like you're an atheist for a lot of gods. I only believe in one god less than you," right? Like it's like, well, okay, I'm not married to your wife. I have one less wife than you. Like what's the point of saying that? It's just like not an argument, and it's also based on the fact that they don't understand what the distinction between little g god and big G god actually is.
Yeah, I do wonder how much of that is the fault of bad Christian theology, and how much of that is just their own stupidity.
I'm going to be honest though, and both of you have talked to extensively about this, but a lot of it is just cooming. Like,
yeah,
it's cope for wanting to, and I don't like using the word cope, but if you get down to it, it's they don't want to stop jerking off. and if they became Christian, they'd have to stop jerking off, or they'd have to stop like whatever else they're doing. And they either, I mean, in a lot of cases it's not even their fault. They just got fucked up because like we make fun of Coomers, but I don't know, I've been there in my life. Probably most of you listening to this have been. You got fucked up because no one told you how much it would fuck you up, and they made this stuff accessible to you. So I make fun of them, but it's also sad, really.
A lot of the time, you make a really stupid moral decision as well. Like I've done that, and you get trapped in something, and then you got to sweat your way out. And it's like, well, you should thank God that you haven't been damned to hell before you could break yourself out of it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, God break you out, because let's be honest.
Yeah, but regarding combing and everything, how do you stop teenagers from like combing and fornicating with every woman and being lustful? Because they're just teenagers. They just don't know any better. Plus,
You teach them better.
keep in mind, what?
You teach them better, in worst case scenario, you have shotgun weddings.
But dude, most of the time they're introduced to those concepts when they're in school by their peers and schoolmates.
Well, yeah, you
Like,
just make
if you-
it society. Like the one thing you want to remember about not atheists, about teenagers, is that they're very easy to socially pressure, and they will often admire teachers. Like often with girls openly, men very quietly will. And so if you get good teachers in there, first of all, and second of all, create like a societal pressure against it, then you'll have less of these people doing it.
Yeah. One of the great historical misconceptions that people like to perpetuate is the idea that, oh, people were just as promiscuous in the past as they are today, or almost as much. And no, you know, I've read
No.
books about 17th century peasants, for example, which point out like abortion was basically unheard of and it was punishable by death anyway. Turns out laws like that actually work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they'll be like,
keep in
oh, you
mind
can't
the
ban
back-
guns. You can't ban pornography because you can't ban guns. It's like, watch me.
Also, keep in mind, you mentioned 17th century. Keep in mind, by that time, men and women were married in their teenage years.
That's not actually
by
true.
then.
That's not actually true. In the 17th century, the average man married at around the age of 27, and the average woman married around the age of 25. And this is actually really well documented. It was only among the upper classes that you had very young female marriages. Most people simply couldn't afford to marry that young. And so marrying in their mid-20s was a way of limiting fertility without resorting to, like, you know, contraceptives or abortion.
Okay, how did they manage to have plenty of kids then? Was it all...
I mean, you're
Yeah.
still able to have plenty of kids, you know, like 6 after the age of 20. Like, it's women don't suddenly stop being fertile at the age of 30. That's kind of a
I know.
manosphere.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so she's hit the wall, so she's incapable of it, right? Like, I mean, there
Yeah.
are women who will give birth at the age of 40, right? That's why you've had huge peasant families in spite of this.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of people nowadays lacking the self-control. And so they'll pretend that, like, you'll have these sort of Kuma types, they'll pretend as if it's like, oh, it's just freedom to masturbate. It's like, no, we know that you're ashamed. I know, I was there. I know I was ashamed, right?
I was ashamed of it without even being told anything about
Yeah,
it.
me too.
I was just automatically ashamed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, and like
But-
as you like get habituated into it, the shame is less and less and less and less. But
Yeah.
you, like, you know, like if you, for example, if you talk to like a person about the time that they lost their virginity and then use that to make a sexual point, right? They'll often be far more amenable than if you just talk about it in general, because you're making reference to the time when they either made a very big mistake or, you know, they were married.
Yeah.
Why are people having as many kids today as opposed to the 70s century?
As opposed to why don't they have as many kids?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's birth control and probably the cost of housing extent.
Like to
Housing
defend.
was cheap then? Is
So-
that what
sorry.
you're implying? That,
Uh,
are you implying that housing was cheap back then?
well, people were satisfied with smaller houses, and not everyone lived jam-packed in cities.
I mean, a lot of the time they couldn't even afford shoes for their children. It was just that they were like more willing to say, okay, I love children. I love having another person running around. I'm willing to make that sacrifice, and if the child doesn't have shoes, so what?
Yeah.
Also,
I
keep
mean-
in mind back then, women took care of the children and men worked. As opposed to today, where both parents have to work in order to.
I mean, didn't
like-
women?
They
work
worked in the fields.
Yeah.
They worked in the
Yeah.
fields. They would do a lot of housework that was, they'd make clothing, they'd cook, they'd clean, they'd, weed the gardens, weed the farms. It was tough work.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
And-
Also, I think-
the woman not working thing is a gigantic meme that only really existed in post-war America up to maybe 1965, 1970.
Wasn't that like a Victorian era ideal or something?
Maybe for the upper middle class, but for everyone
Mhm.
else, the woman worked in some capacity. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think that if you... I mean, the woman's got arms and legs and can do things. Like, she shouldn't just sit there and birth babies. That's against... I mean, that's against her dignity, right? There's a reason why feminists get outraged when you suggest something like that, and it's because they understand innately that they're meant to do more than
Well, you see, historically, women have been two things. A, they've been punching bags for men, because historically, men just constantly beat women. On the other hand, they were baby factories. So they would just have babies, and to ensure that they were having healthy babies, the men would just beat them. And
Thank you, Marx. I'm glad that you gave that elucidation of the situation of a married woman.
because that's
She was just chained to the kitchen sink. She couldn't walk anywhere. Like, she had to ask her husband to get the key.
That's pretty base, man.
and
We should totally emulate this caricature.
and the funniest
Women weren't educated, before the Second World War. Women weren't educated. Saint Edith Stein and all those nuns, they never existed.
The funny thing is, though, and I invite anybody to just keep this in mind, every single historian will say women were treated good in their time period, but not in other time periods. Like,
You mean the time period of their special?
yeah,
right?
like it'll be other than people who study Han China or like ancient Greece. Other than like those two, but if you talk about
Korea.
if you talk about like ancient Mesopotamia or ancient Egypt or like the Aztecs or like or Mongolia or medieval Europe, it's always like women during this age weren't treated that bad, but they were treated bad every other time.
It's like maybe the whole thing. Maybe it's all bullshit.
Mhm.
Maybe people loved their wives throughout much of human history.
I mean,
Unless
one thing
you're Chinese. Unless you're Chinese.
like, we pretend that we're in a feminist age, right? But I've seen enough in nightclubs of women just being passed around as if they're objects, and then going and working as like some sort of secretary who's ultimately disposable. And then we pretend that other ages are like not respecting the rights and the the goodness of women. Like, I mean, like, this is someone's daughter. Does no one like stop that, or is this like her liberating herself by enslaving herself to a vice? Oh, she can take heroin now, and post pictures on OnlyFans. Well, like, what kind of freedom is that?
Can I just say I find the simulation of intimacy that you see on OnlyFans like psychopathic.
Yeah.
It's really freaky.
Oh, I just have to read. I got a super chat from Eldritch Fan for $2. We need axolotl tags. Based
Oh
in
my
Zen
gosh.
Sufi pilled.
Based.
Dude.
Based. I love dude.
Wait, guys, I've
Yeah.
got a comment I've just seen. Progressivism and traditionalism are two sides of the same exact gynocentric coin.
That's,
Well, I mean-
that's a big brain take.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we get it. You hate your mom.
It's like women are just as much of members of society as we are. They have different capabilities, different essences, and if we're going to run society well, they should be allowed to express the fullness of that. Like, if that's like making society gynocentric or making someone a simp, then I don't know how that would work. Like, I'm not saying that all women are queens and we should put them on pedestals. Like, I've met some pretty disgusting women in my own life. Like, I'm sure everyone here has, right? But what I'm saying is, like, the society should be there to serve the needs of women and, enable what they're good at while doing the same for the men as well. Now we live in a society that does neither. So I think, like, we often talk about this with men. You have these like effeminate, simping men who come online and will simp to any old woman who will take their money. That's disgusting. Yeah, that needs to be stopped. But so does the woman doing that, right? Because she's not acting in her best interest when she does that. How do you think her husband's going to react when they find the OnlyFans account that she had 10 years before?
Implying
that'd be grounds for
never going to
divorce.
be a husband.
No,
Yeah.
I have confidence that I will at some point if God.
No. Implying there will ever be a husband with the OnlyFans.
No, don't
Yeah.
underestimate men. There will be men who will marry that kind of thing.
Oh God, that is sad. Yeah.
Also,
Well,
another
some
thing in
people-
17th century, I bet, is that women were much less picky with the men. They only had a limited pool of men they could choose because they could not travel between cities. So, yeah, even ugly men could find a wife at least, and a job.
I
back
think
then.
that's the exact problem though. Like you're viewing the problem as if it's like some sort of economic problem. You know, there's scarcity of women or there's a lack of women, rather than viewing it as what it is, and that's an act of providence, right? There could be like 10% women and 90% guys, and it might be a low probability, but providence might act, and you might attract a woman, right? But if you're thinking continually in this this sexual marketplace, ideology that dominates the internet, right? You're just going to continually be playing in your head with different equations. And that's not how attraction works.
it's kind of RNG dependent.
Well, it's God's will.
Yeah.
In a literal sense, right?
Yeah.
Like you could be the ugly guy, but for whatever reason a woman finds you attractive. Right? Like there's all kinds of ugly guys who are with really like attractive women. And largely this is because the guy has some other, virtue. Like he's incredibly confident. He doesn't care. Or
He's rich.
I don't think he's rich. I think that's I think that with a lot of women that's a thing, but I think it's a minority because a lot of them will see the riches and they'll be like, "Oh, that's beautiful," but also there's a brain part of their head, or maybe it's their own rationality depending on the woman. They'll say like, "Okay, this guy
look
has the
at
money."
Weinstein. If he could manage to find women, then I don't know.
I don't know
He
how
did
that.
manage.
Yeah, but I don't think the finding was necessarily as consensual or without duress as perhaps we wanted to be.
Sorry, who are we talking about right now?
Harvey Weinstein.
Well, here's a better one. What about like Scott Adams and his hot wife? I mean, he's successful, but I don't imagine he's also just really funny. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, he wrote Dill.
no, I mean, yeah, and women like stuff like that. So
Yeah, it's like the money alone thing. Like you can lose money like that, right? You can lose it in a split second, and women know that. And if they're the kind of woman who's purely interested in that, she'll leave you, right? But most women aren't. Most women are looking for more than that. So I don't see like, you see, it's a sort of like a very low resolution view of hypergamy,
Yeah.
where it's just like, okay, he has money, he has resources, he can look after baby. But it's really far more sophisticated than that because it's ignoring it's acknowledging the often overlooked aspect of marriage, which is giving birth to a child. But it's also completely ignoring the unitive factor, which is kind of fetishized a lot in our society. You've got the waifu phenomenon is kind of like a weird manifestation of this. The unitive action with the woman or the unitive action with the guy. People will construct these spouses in the sky, right, based on this. But really, it's both. And a woman and hopefully a guy will think under both circumstances. Because if you think purely in terms of procreation, you're going to be looking in a more economic way. But if you're looking purely in terms of unitive, especially if you're somebody who's grounded in sin, which is everyone to lesser or greater extent, you're going to be picking someone who might just please your appetites, and that's going to be unstable as well. It's got to be both.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. It's just hard today to find a good woman.
Oh,
Yeah,
well.
it's hard, but wait.
Yeah, wait 20 years. Wait until you're 40.
So what's happening?
Or you could.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask what's happening in the UK with like the COVID stuff.
They've got this weird 3-tier system Now, thankfully, the religious communities in Britain, the various churches and the Muslims, were able to relentlessly pressure the government into opening up the churches for mass and for confession, regardless of the tiers. But besides that, there are sort of like scaling lockdowns. So, I think in tier 1 you can have like these mass gatherings, and then you've got tier 3, which I'm in at the moment, where it's like you can only see a maximum of 8 people or something stupid like that, something arbitrary like that. It's really weird. It's really inconsistent, and frankly, I think that it's largely just a pretense to try and return things back to normal.
It's because I know like where I am, they've just canceled all religious services, so there probably won't be any Christmas masses here.
That's awful.
Yeah, I'm thankful to God that I was able to go to mass today, but there wasn't confession yesterday, which was a bit irritating.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Arjun, were you able to make your holy day of obligation on Tuesday?
What was Tuesday?
The Immaculate Conception.
I don't think that's a day of obligation in Canada.
Yeah, it's not a day of obligation.
Oh, it's not?
And
Yeah,
there are
it's
no
like-
days of obligation at the moment, anyways.
Yeah, there is a
They've all been
dispensation.
suspended.
I mean, we had a pretty big mass at my parish, and then I guess we'll be having the midnight Christmas mass, at my parish. If I don't know like how it is in Canada, but we're having things as normal aside from extra events, like youth meetings and stuff like that. That's canceled, But is your parish like doing the same things? Is everything running as routine, or is it everything?
Nope, everything's
just different?
closed.
yeah,
Everything's closed?
and his parish is actually a really good traditional parish, but it's not really up to them.
Well, they don't want to close, but the government. Also, the
Yeah.
Orthodox are just not allowed to have any services, even during lower tiers of lockdown, because of the way they distribute communion. So,
No kidding.
Well, not only that, but like, didn't the Orthodox bishops have like a massive fight of like, you're going to close down because I'm going to close down, and if you close down and I don't, I'll get your parishioners. Like, they were kind of like weirdly fighting in the hierarchy over where the parishioners would go, and not wanting to lose people in their particular communities.
That's pretty sick.
Are you still Are you still able to receive on the tongue, or?
No, you're
well,
not.
we aren't allowed to receive at all. So, like,
We were
here's the
not
thing,
able to receive them.
no.
The church is pretty much dying.
Because I know that was a fight for a while, but
Nope, you're
Imagine
not
living
allowed to
in an
do that.
Anglican
You're not allowed to go to church. It's
Can you hear me?
yeah.
It's
Well, like I
garbage.
said, the church.
The church what? Say, dude.
The church has been centuries. Really.
You're cutting
Microphone.
out. I don't know. Turn down your sensitivity or something, or I guess turn it up. I don't know what it would be, but
Turn up the sound.
Okay, the church has been dying for a couple centuries. It's not really any.
It's,
Communism pretty
you
much
know,
is
it's seen a lot of revivals. I mean, for example, one of the best periods for Catholicism was probably the period from roughly 1815 until the 1950s and 60s. Catholicism grew tremendously in that period and was making a comeback in many Protestant.
maybe in absolute numbers, but it's not just absolute numbers, right?
Oh, okay.
Christianity is technically in raw numbers. It's still growing, but
Yeah, that's true.
everyone agrees it's not a good time.
No, that's
I mean, there's never been really a good time in church in like the existence of the church. Like, you forget during even
no,
the
no.
ages of faith at the end of the
There was
the
like
end of
corrupt
the 15th
churches.
century,
Wait,
14th century rather, you still had like a very large number of people who were completely black-pilled by the Black Death, and they started reverting to pagan practices like sacrificing children in the woods and reading their entrails, and that required saints like, say, what was his name? Saint Vincent Ferrer, someone who was known for raising 28 people from the dead, to go through and re-preach the faith. Like, the church almost died in the 14th century. It was
But you
a
know
very-
what's a good indicator that is when people are sacrificing for faith in that.
Dude,
At
you're
least in the
cutting
past,
out
we never
pretty
really.
constantly.
You are really quiet. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're kind
Is
of
this
quiet.
better?
Turn up your
Is
mic
this better? Is this better?
A little bit.
a little bit, but you might want to up it a little more.
Can't really do this shit here, but
You're still too quiet.
give me a sec. Let's keep up your thing.
So,
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
church has seen better days, but it's not that bad.
I think that I think there's a good case that the Black Death led to the Reformation, just because of how all the good priests died basically during the Black Death.
A lot of good priests died, and there was one of the problems was during the Great Western Schism, German priests did not have access to the University of Paris anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so they founded new universities in Germany. And unfortunately, those universities were, staffed by like lots of nominalists and lots of shitty priests due to a founder effect caused by the sponsorship of Kaiser Louis IV, who was in a conflict with the Pope. It's all very complicated, but basically, in certain parts of Europe, the clergy were just really, really, really bad after the crisis.
There was no formal seminary system until after Trent. Yeah, and also one thing you've got to remember is that starting in the 14th century, you had very, very interested state actors involved in biblical criticism, so they could interpret the scriptures to their own ends. Scott Hahn actually wrote a book on this.
I really want that book.
There's a bunch of them actually. He wrote one that was written about biblical criticism from 1700 to 1900, called, I think it was Biblical Criticism and the Art of Statecraft, because what happened in between 1700 and 1900 was the beginning of all this really crazy biblical critical analyses of the scriptures and coming to really weird conclusions, like the documentary hypothesis of Julius Wellhausen, which purports that the first 5 books of the Old Testament were actually written by 4 separate authors in really arbitrary situations as well. And we now know, very much contrary to the actual archaeological evidence we have, lots of people, like, for example, somebody in the chat, like someone denying the historicity of Jesus when it's one of the most obvious things that, there's more evidence for Jesus than there is for Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kind of very typical atheistic memes come out of this time. But the trouble is that modern biblical scholarship, at least people in Catholic biblical scholarship, people like Dr. Brant Petrie, Dr. Scott Hahn, Dr. John Bergsma, and this was all begun actually by Benedict XVI. These people have just walked in and just stomped a lot of the critical scholarship, completely stomped it into the ground.
As far as I know, a lot of the critical scholarship suffers from a kind of founder effect that tends to lead to these kinds of liberal conclusions. And so it's not so much that, all these independent biblical scholars are arriving at... it's the system they're taught itself is almost programmed to lead to those kinds of conclusions.
So to my point earlier, by the way, can you hear me?
Yes.
Alright, so to my point earlier when I was saying a good indicator of if the faith is high is how much people are willing to sacrifice for it. And I don't mean like elites, because they don't care, they're just making money, right? But like if the peasants are willing to give up for it, give up a lot for it, then obviously, they're genuine about it. Like if you talk about the Crusades and shit, they obviously believed, even if you think it was crazy, they obviously believed, because the only reward that they were promised was religious, which is you were forgiven of your sins. So if you're not a believer, you're not gonna care. Like, oh, forgiven of what sins? Oh, from what God? You see what I mean?
Yeah, and another thing as well.
A good indicator to see if someone's religious, like genuinely, offer them to do a really fucked up task, but a really good reward. It's definitely worth it, but it would only matter if they believe. So that's.
Oh, like engaging in certain unutterable sins for the sake of money.
What?
like like certain unutterable sins for the sake of say $10 million.
Small,
I mean,
small loan.
it's corrupt, but I'm saying it's a way you could test if someone's genuine in their faith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I suppose so, or at least in their moral convictions. Yeah.
Now, if they're
Go-
famous, like that is a different story. Just like, oh, I'm donating because I care. No, you don't. You don't care. But if they're like just random
Yeah.
everyday average Joe, no one's gonna remember what they did. Like, yeah, then you can believe that then.
Yeah, another thing as well that I think this is like I don't know if I call it a blind spot because I suspect many academics are aware of this, but there's a lot of academics who seem to be unaware that they can be caught in exactly the same novelties and innovations as every other uneducated human being, and so you get these trends in academia where people are preaching things that are really stupid, right? And then eventually one person points out, hey, this is stupid for X obvious reason, and then like these will get nay-nayed in the academy. Like for example, when I was talking to this atheist, the guy denied that there's such thing as redness without human beings to look at it. Right?
Yeah,
Now, this is of course absurd, but this is like a really prevalent view amongst say post-structuralist and postmodernist philosophers. Like Derrida, I believe it might be Derrida, believes that you can literally pick up an object, squeeze your eyes together, and it will change the essence of the object in your hand.
It's a pretty ridiculous view, but it's not that surprising.
Yeah, and you get these sort of stupid trends in academia constantly.
Unfortunately.
So
The
my
thing is also to overlook a
interpretation
lot is
is always you could become
communism is really
immortal.
just a response to the death of Christianity. Because people want some kind of a god, because the reason that Christianity, now from a secular point of view, right? Because from a Christian point of view, it's obviously, well, God wanted the faith to spread, so it'll spread. But an atheist is gonna be like, yeah, but what if there's no God in the first place, right? So a secular point of view as to why Christianity spread was because everyone is not equal. That's a fact, right? Some people are objectively superior to others overall. So people are like, well, I was the unfair hand in life. And how do they want to deal with unfair hand in life? Well, if you have some kind of a hope that you'll go to heaven, not based at all in if you're physically advantaged or mentally or how you're born, but rather on your choices, right? That's your sin and all that, and everyone can be forgiven and end up in heaven if you do the right thing. That kind of gave people hope, because again, which is generally why the physically stronger people, although they tend to be more conservative because they have less to gain from communism because they're naturally superior. Why would they want to be in a system where you don't get the benefit from being better? But at the same time are also not religious, not necessarily because Christianity is a religion of the weak or anything, but Christianity gives hope to people who generally are weak, and people who are strong, they're fine with that because it's been mixed into the culture, if that makes sense.
No, I completely disagree, and there's actually a book that partially shows why. There's a book written by an economic historian called James R. Benniger, like Benniger, and it's called The Control Revolution, Technological and Economic Origins of the Information Society. And there's a chapter in here that describes precisely why communism came about. So, if we consider the mercantilist system of the Middle Ages, so the economic system of 14th century Florence through to about the 18th century, right? You have this problem where everything is enmeshed together in terms of personal relationships. So the merchant has to be like great friends with everyone he interacts with. Now, this causes the problem for business because it necessarily limits not only how many people you can interact with, but it also limits how far away that person can be. So, for example, in, say, 1750, it's very hard to be an extremely close friend with somebody when you're in France and they're in Vietnam, right? Now, this leads to the merchants not being able to risk so much globalizing the economy. So it's very difficult to say, reliably ship in spices from Vietnam when you don't have the personal relationships there. Now, communications technology enabled these sorts of relationships to be far more easy to build. Right, so the telegram made it a lot easier to communicate from France to Vietnam, just as one example, and therefore it could build up the relationships. In fact, one of the economic theories that was being used in the 19th century was the deliberate reduction in the level of intimacy between businessmen and their managers and their employees, such that they can increase production. There's actually a paper.
Is
let
that
me
called
find the author.
Taylorism?
Pardon?
Is that Taylorism?
Taylorism.
No, I thought that's what that philosophy was called. I could be wrong though.
I can't remember the exact thing. I've only read it in this particular book. But the net result of this, according to a paper that was written in 1974 by a man, I think it was Tom Killian, is that this resulted in the breakdown of relationships. So you've obviously got more impersonal, more business-related relationships because there are more relationships going on, so you can't really contribute time to each other in that context. This leads to alienation, particularly amongst the working class who are spending 18 hours a day working, say, for example, on a nodding jenny, right? Like making cloth from cotton. And this, of course, makes people miserable. Now, in comes Karl Marx, because you have these people who are very resentful of their economic situation. They see no way out, and they're not able to produce social relationships such that doesn't matter. There's a reason why the family is such an important thing, and the nation is such an important thing in the Bible, and that's because that's really where life is, best. The Book of Ecclesiastes, for example, completely, dismisses wealth as vanity, but it says that, a good friend is something great. But this economic system destroys that, so there's no social outlet, so it doesn't really matter. Enter communism, which says, oh, we can all be equal. People don't have to work these 18-hour days, and we're going to destroy this corrupt economic system that's causing this, right? Which, of course, exploits the alienation of the working class. Now, I don't claim to give like a highly detailed analysis of communism here, but you can understand why it would become popular amongst the working class, considering the economic understandings going on amongst the business class and their own material situations.
Yes.
Also, Marx predicted that the revolution would happen in highly developed industrialized countries, and no, it developed in poor countries that are often highly religious and highly agrarian, like Russia and China. Which is his false prediction.
Well, you see, the problem is
Why is
that
that?
in Russia, the revolution began in the highly industrialized parts of that country.
Yeah, it's just that the industry was centralized enough that a small enough could take over all the industry and then cut off the army while it was at war.
Yeah,
I
like
think
the revolution happened in Volgograd,
I think
No,
it's more that you
Volgograd,
need a
Petrograd.
large, educated middle class that wants power to have it. One to embody power and the other to desire it.
I'm just learning about the subject, but I think the problem also is the very first communist would be the Hussites. I mean, I could be wrong, but
The Taborites, to be specific.
You would be. I mean, that's one example of a group that behaves like that. But the Fraticelli, who were known as the spiritual Franciscans, had a lot of similarities with modern socialism as well.
Yeah.
Well, you guys know who the first communist was, right?
Who?
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's one of the cringiest memes.
Christianity, the grandmother of Bolshevism. Yeah,
You know how you can tell that Jesus was really not keen on the rich?
How?
Because he chose to be descended from the king of a country, son of David.
Arjun,
Like,
Jesus would have supported Black Lives Matter, don't you know?
Well, because I remember some people were saying, "Oh, well, under one night when I was drunk, I sort of read this part of Catholic social teaching that said BLM was okay, and I just like, well, the Bible, the Ten Commandments say thou shalt not steal. I mean, like, there's nothing.
I mean, it's redistribution, isn't it?
Yeah, it's no, it's like it's
That's what they'll say. You know, they'll say it's not stealing, it's redistribution.
like, and you get into some of these people who are like Nazbul Catholics or whatever, and they do try to make like the case that private property's bad, and that always irritates me.
And then you get these retards that try to say Jesus was.
But because I mean, I think the church is pretty. I think Christianity is pretty clear that stealing other people's property is bad.
You know, I
Who's
don't
that
see
one
how you
person?
can.
Go on.
One thing I don't understand is how you can say Jesus was a socialist when Karl Marx's
people who
treatises
honor
against
think
religion were written
That
before
Jesus
his economic
supported
ones.
prostitution.
Sin no more.
Yeah.
Forgiving someone is not the same as approving of what they did.
In fact, the very concept of forgiveness requires that you did not approve of what they did.
Mm-hmm.
Racist. Racist.
Yes.
CNN doesn't approve.
It's just I don't know. It's just bullshit. Like once again, I private property is a thing. I don't think the church has ever taught that private property is bad. I think they've taught like having no compassion for your fellow man is bad, and they've taught that like the thing is a lot of the people that they're criticizing are like people who gain their property immorally or like by stealing or cheating people.
We render to Caesar what Caesar's and unto God what's God's. I think that quite literally says that there are some things that belong to certain people, not everything belongs to everyone.
Well, I mean, also the universe just belongs to God, so.
Yeah, but Argent looting is okay because black people.
It's that is true.
You see,
Because
you see, like
Hebrews
rendering
black
to
gender
Caesar. You know, rendering to Caesar insofar as Caesar has a legitimate reason to ask for it is the same as rendering to God, because God sticks Caesar above you.
Mm-hmm.
it's
My
okay,
whole
completely
point
okay
is,
to loot
Brother
because
Caesar,
some
what's
black
Caesar?
gambagger got
God.
shot
Alright,
in
and
Minneapolis.
onto me, what's... I know some.
By the way,
It's not...
completely random digression. I was kind of shocked that what was it called again? That George Floyd wasn't Times Person of the Year.
They don't need him anymore.
That is
Surprised
kind of
Surprised
shocking.
it wasn't actually successfully, like, put on the front cover.
Yeah. They just don't need him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he never really did anything of note except die.
Did nothing except
As far as we know,
die.
like he died in an unfortunate circumstance which set off a bunch of riots. That's as far as we really know. Whereas you can, like, who did they put on front? Like, wasn't it Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and Xi Jinping together or something?
Biden.
Apparently they were
Well, the
Kamala.
most significant thing
Take
that
your
George
font,
Floyd did is he
then
created
Biden.
a new religion, and he is the saint for many so-called Christians.
Apparently they literally wrote Kamala in a thicker font than Biden.
Well,
Yeah, I think they plan on disposing of Biden at some point.
I think Biden knows it as well.
If
Like
he
some of the hot
lasts
takes
a
he has at
year,
Kamala.
it's just to make it look less suspicious. No, I think they'll let Kamala step in officially after 2 years, because then she can get a third term.
Oh.
Biden will get accidentally shot 10 times in
Decade
the
of a
head.
literal thought. Like, she literally slept her way to the top.
I like how she's not black. I think that might be the funniest aspect of the whole thing.
How she's an
Are
Indian
you
woman
saying
LARPing
she's
as a black woman.
Only Biden can say that. How dare you?
She's like a
She
quarter.
doesn't even look black.
No, she's Indian. She's like
I know, like she
Vaccine
doesn't have like
literally-
a black nose
question
or
is
like
CDC.
the complexion of a black woman. She doesn't have a black forehead.
Y'all taking the vaccine?
No. Have they already made it?
Yeah. So I think what Trump's plan was is I think he felt the only way to resolve COVID was with a vaccine, so all his efforts went into developing one. So America has a vaccine now and they'll probably get it first. Here's my issue though is you're still contagious apparently once you get the vaccine.
If they
So it's like
if,
so it's
if they give America the vaccine first instead of everyone, if they give it to America first, you know they put some.
well, it's the thing
The vaccine
is, like for people my age who are reasonably healthy, COVID's not going to kill me. COVID only has like a 1 in 1,000 chance of killing me, anyways. And the vaccine probably has a higher chance of severe side effects than that. So
We've had it deployed in Britain amongst certain people, and it actually causes worse symptoms, or either the same or worse symptoms than corona.
because
Like,
yeah,
why would I bother?
When I
Like,
have
there's
to
been
plug in and out.
like I get for vulnerable people, like for old people or people with compromised immune systems, like I get it. But if I'm still gonna have to wear a mask anyways, like what difference does it make?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, Arjun, I'm gonna head off. It was
Okay.
nice seeing everyone.
Yep, thanks for coming on, man.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, also, correction in the chat. Apparently, Kamala Harris's dad is Jamaican.
He's a mulatto and her mother's Indian. So she's like a quarter black.
About as black as Elizabeth Warren is Indian.
She's like la creatura. Jag love
I like how black people in the US have internalized the one drop rule. Is that actually internalized racism? I think it might actually be.
Wait, Trump is orange. That's kind of that's kind of darker than white. Does that kind
I don't know, orange man bad.
I literally cannot hear this dude.
remember orange?
I mean, by that standard,
That's
you could argue that a lot of the Black Lives Matter talking points are internalized racism, because the actual net result of them getting what they want would be the slow decline and destruction of the black community through reduction of birth rates and destruction of family ties.
Here's the thing, they don't care. It's all
Pushed it.
aggressive.
I forgot her name. But she said she wanted to get rid of black people. That's why she pushed for abortions.
Margaret Sanger. Probably.
It means Trump is half yellow, is what somebody
Just
says.
that ass basically go like, take the vaccine or you ain't black.
That's possibly true. I mean, I guess Trump could be, if
No, he actually said. He said, "Don't worry, take the because some bitch." He dead ass pulled a Biden. He's like, "The vaccine, are you... Hey, I'll just mail it in. Give me a mail in."
someone says didn't Kamala get 1% in the primaries? Yeah, something like that. I mean, the primaries were obviously there was some shenanigans going on because everyone dropped out before Super Tuesday, like 2 days before. And at that point, like, there's no reason to not just keep your name on the ballot. Like, there's no reason to just not wait 2 days, see if you get any votes, and then decide if you want to stay in or not. It's very clear they all dropped out, so Biden would beat Bernie. I do remember Trump had one of my all-time favorite tweets for him was when that black woman ran up and stole his microphone. And Trump tweeted, Bernie can't even defend his microphone. How will he defend America? Sad.
But Trump is the most savage president. Like, you can't even deny that at this point.
Like, I was kind of hoping that they'd let him prosecute and then win the election just to see the
Did you hear
reaction
what I
out
said
of the
about
Democrat
Fauci
people.
vaccine?
Huh?
Mike's still kind of gay. Did you hear what I said though?
Sorry, what are you talking about? I can't really hear you.
Hello, hello. Hear me better now?
A bit.
Alright. So I said, Fauci basically pulled it, if you don't take the vaccine, you ain't black, right? He said, don't worry, black guys, take the vaccine, because a black bitch made it.
Oh, right. Yeah, because of Harriet
And-
slacks.
And my suggestion is just give everyone mail-in vaccines.
That's true.
Like no fraud, no widespread fraud, no widespread fraud enough to change the outcome of the COVID situation. No widespread fraud to the point where it'll cause another pandemic that is proven beyond a reasonable doubt by the Supreme Court.
So Renaissance man, have you heard that YouTube will probably start banning people after Biden's inaugurated? For if they I think it's even if they talk about the election at all. I don't even know if it's they talk about fraud, but just
The asterisk president.
Well, good for them. I mean, they're already making themselves quite unpopular. I don't know how.
How much you want to
You
bet they
s-
already have a policy ready to pull out of their ass?
no, I mean
Yeah,
they've
you see,
announced
like-
this already. Like
You see, these
They
tech
always
people
have some,
pretend that
like,
they've got a load
random
of
obscure
power.
policy.
These
There
tech
you
people
go.
pretend like they've got loads of power, and for the moment they do, but they don't seem to be very good at studying history because the moment anybody gets too arrogant, they get cut down. And frankly, I can see these tech companies getting one almighty cut down very soon.
Well,
Like what?
nobody likes Biden. The left doesn't even like Biden. They settled for Biden, but Biden's gonna just fuck everyone. Like, no one's gonna defend Biden. Remember, nobody wanted Biden. So when the right cuts Biden down, the left's not gonna defend him. They're just gonna
no,
like,
they
oh
are.
no, Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad. But like, as soon as Trump's dead, who are they gonna rail
No, but they
against?
play to win. Our side doesn't play to win, which is why we keep losing.
Here's the thing: the right is more like the we don't fight for some reason, which is really retarded. Because whenever we do fight, we win, but we never actually fight. Like really rarely.
What are you talking about? We're constantly fighting each other.
They'll defend Biden, but honestly, we deserve him.
Well, I actually made a video on this yesterday,
I
right?
said-
Like,
The right
Like-
doesn't fight for. It does, which makes me.
it does fight itself.
Fight.
Like we're constantly having these streams where we're discussing political action and political whatever, right? But no one actually does anything because, frankly, the people who are discussing these sorts of things aren't dispositionally suited to political power. And the trouble is that nobody on the right is actually willing to admit that, or at least very few are. And so nothing gets done just because nobody's actually looking like, hey, here's somebody
Because
who's
the
like,
right is mindless.
I just like to give a shout out to Nick Fuentes because I gained a lot of respect for him for this. He's kind of cringy. He can be a bit of a dick. He has bad associations some of the times, but he actually stood up and did more than like the entire National Republican Party did. Him and Alex Jones like actually went out there and fought. So
yeah,
I
it's
still
like,
think he's bad for the
But
movement.
of course, he's like literally Hitler.
yeah, but the thing is, like, don't you see the problem, right? You've got this sort of rhetoric that's on the right that doesn't like. I mean, it's funny and it's true, but it doesn't really play into people's feelings very well. Whereas the left is really good at that. So, for example,
You
watch the
think-
debate. Watch the debate between when I think it was when Barack Obama was going to become, I think it was mayor of Chicago, right? Watch that. Watch the debate between him and the Republican candidate, who was also black, on gay marriage. Now you see this Republican candidate break down in very clear terms why gay marriage just doesn't work, and then you have Obama using these, very soft, ultimately meaningless platitudes, right? But he's playing like people's emotions very well. Now the trouble with people on the right is I think because we're like more analytical and more autistic than the left, we're not as able to do that. If you were to find somebody who was right wing, had the same level of analysis, and was able to marry this with an understanding of human emotions like Obama did, then you'd have an incredibly powerful candidate. It's just a matter of finding that kind of person, and we just
You
haven't
have
found
to
that yet.
mix facts.
Well, that's
you have
what
to
Trump
mix
did.
facts with an emotional appeal. That's how you win every time.
It's ethos, pathos, logos. It's Aristotle's rhetoric.
And it's like factually, the right has to stop worrying about being factually accurate. I'm not saying be
What?
factually inaccurate. I'm already factually accurate. When the left says something, you just assume it's wrong by default. Then find an emotional way to oppose that. That's simple.
What?
That's the solution.
What? No, like you
Okay,
always,
Mary?
No.
you've always found, no, like that's ridiculous. You've always find what is true, and talk about that because that's just good principle. That's just good integrity. You just express it in such a
But the
way.
left is winning. You have to play their game, but
They're gonna beat
one
you
up
in
them.
their game because they've been playing it for 100 years. You.
Yeah, but the last time we actually went to war over this game, we won.
When was that?
Civil War, World War II, Cold War.
We didn't
Did?
win the Cold War, dude. It's just that Russia lost.
Look, you have to
But
remember,
communists won.
the side of freedom is generally right because of right is like
Side of freedom? What? What does that even mean?
when
The
really
world has been going less
alt-right would
free
just be
and more tyrannical.
what?
The world today is less free and more tyrannical than before. They just call it anarcho-tyranny, where corporations are just free to do whatever they want.
Amazing. The further right you go, the more freedom-oriented you are. Like,
No, that's not
But
true.
no, no,
No, that's ridiculous.
the
Like,
wrong
you'd be calling
side
me-
won
You'd
World
be
War II.
calling
You know
me.
that.
No, actually, I think the Nazis would have degenerated far quicker than we would have.
I tend to
Oh.
agree with that.
just wanna
Like,
think,
not even a competition. Like you see, like that'd be like saying that I'm a massive leftist because I don't believe in freedom of speech or even in free market capitalism.
I'm not saying that like you have to be fully like a anarchist. I'm saying like the ultra alt-right would logically be the maximum freedom, like logical
No.
conclusion
No.
of going
What?
as
No.
far as you can. That would be that.
No, of course not.
No, I'm
Um,
saying
I-
by the modern definitions, right? That's the thing. Like people change the definitions.
Even then, though, it wouldn't because you'd consider somebody who despises homosexuals to be more right wing than a lolbert.
Right, but
And if you wish to oppose homosexuality, you have to learn to
here's my take
oppose
on how
freedoms.
the system would be fixed, right? Bring society, bring the in terms of from a like we can keep the technology obviously, but in terms of culture and laws, bring it back to like 1900 around that area, minus maybe segregation and some shit. But other than that, like keep it that way, we get.
How are you going to oppose abortion and homosexuality with absolute freedom?
I'm not for absolute freedom. That's the thing. I'm not even like a conservative by modern standards or whatever. I'm more of an old school type. I'm closer to an old school conservative than I am anything you have today. But I wouldn't exactly perfectly be that either. But I identify more with even a Democrat from 1900 than I would have any Republicans today.
Yeah, but like, why does any of this matter?
I'm saying if we bring it back to that, we're good. As long
You
as
can
we
identify
learn
with
from
Huey
our
Long,
mistakes
okay?
we
And I
can
Do you
understand that
think?
perspective.
Do you think that? No. Wait. Beyond like a superficial, besides a superficial level, do you think that the average voter, or even the average person in a political party, actually thinks like this?
No. I
So
didn't
why
say
would we
just
care?
vote in someone like that.
Well, if
My
you
thing
want to,
is,
if you want to
eventually-
obtain power, oh my,
No,
go ahead.
The left will eventually cause some kind of a collapse because, like you said earlier, when you get too arrogant, have too much power, eventually you get a French Revolution.
Yes, but we're talking about what we need to do, and it's more than just letting things drop out of the sky. There needs to be some work on our side.
No, we need to prepare for that, but we also need to plan for when that happens because it's eventually going. It's not saying in case it happens. Eventually, it's going to.
Yeah, but you don't know when that is, so you just keep working. Like
Oh, no,
you
no, I'm
have the
not saying-
preparation in
no, I'm not saying
mind, you just
plan
keep
what we do
working.
now. I'm saying plan what we do now, like do it now, do what you can now, but also be ready for what, because we don't want to just do everything on the spot and not know what we're going to do in the future. Because if we don't have a plan, so when we get there, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. We're just like,
Yeah, but we spend
like
plenty of time
freestyling.
talking about that. Like we spend plenty of time talking about that and not developing the personal qualities in leaders necessary to actually change society by acquiring positions in government. Like anyone can like have, I don't know, 6 months of canned food and wait for the apocalypse, or you know, like, how are we going to exploit this power vacuum when it happens? But that's all well and good saying. But what are we doing right now?
Well, I'd suggest if you're living in a big city, get the fuck out of there, right? Go in the middle of nowhere.
So you're suggesting
That's
running?
easier said than done.
I mean,
Right?
I think the reason we've lost every battle for the last 100 years is because conservatives keep giving up and
Exactly.
Exactly.
You don't give an
surrendering.
inch or they take a mile. And we gave them a
Oh,
whole
we're gonna-
fucking mile and they took the entire world.
It's like,
Stop
like
losing
am I not
territory.
Down.
like am I like not making something like clear? Like, running is what has been going on for the last 100 years. We would actually be solving this problem if we were to form leaders. Because you see, Riverrun actually made a really good point about this, right? You know, like, the problem with a lot of people on the actual right wing is that they're autistic, right? Like, they've got all these based takes,
Mhm.
but we're viewed by leftists and urbanite society, which is, for better or worse, the locus of control in this society, as autistic, provincial, or just like not socially well mannered. If we had people who actually held our point of view that could, you know, follow along with that, not in such a way as to appear weak, like some of the lower level, you know, people in their current, like, you know, milieu, but like actually made a difference, then you could be doing some really, like, very good things. But there doesn't appear to be much of a grasping at this. Besides, it seems to mostly be just discussions of ideology and this is wrong, that is wrong. It's like, yeah, we can tell that. That's our analytical strength as people who are on the actual right. This is something that people have a tendency to be like. But there needs to be less focusing on that and more focusing on interpersonal skills.
I think one smart thing that we can definitely use, we can play the PC game with them too. And I don't mean push for PC necessarily everywhere, but I don't approve of PC, obviously. But since it exists, you might as well take advantage of it. If you ever get falsely accused of rape, for example, simply identify as a woman. Simple.
That's not gonna work.
That's not going to work.
I had a homie do it. It worked.
That's the exception.
It
not
worked.
the rule.
He said no. He was like, "What? You're denying that I'm a woman? You're denying I'm a woman?" And it worked.
They're gonna know that they're gonna know that you're basically trying to flip the game, and they're gonna call you out on it. It's just
It
not.
works with fucking pedophiles. Get away with that shit. Why wouldn't it work with like just normal dudes?
And
That
pedophiles
should
just
be
get
proven at that
beaten up in
level.
prison and killed.
I
Like,
think
Yeah,
okay.
but like on the outside, but it's
Phoenix.
this LGBT alphabet bullshit. They get away with it.
No, Phoenix. I think you underestimate just
this
how
only works on the internet.
Phoenix. I think you underestimate how intelligent, and cryptic I hate to use the word, the SJW is. They can very tell just by looking at you that you are a right winger, and if you try to play that game like, oh, I identify as a woman when you get accused of rape or whatever, and therefore I cannot be a rapist, because I have a penis or something like that, they will look at you and say, oh, no, you're not. You're not a leftist. You're a right winger. You're a Trump supporter. You're a neo-Nazi.
Like,
No, but he
I'm
never expressed that he's a right winger or anything.
why are
No,
you
you can
expecting
even
them?
you can
Why,
even pretend
like,
to
he
be like a
intentionally
leftist.
voted
You can
for
pretend to
left-
be. You
No,
can
he
pretend
voted
to
for
be like the
leftist
biggest
one
fan of
time, and he
AOC, but
took a
they
picture of
they
that
can just
shit.
look at you. They can
Guys,
look at you just from your
No, he
facial
intentionally voted
features,
for
and they can tell
leftist
that
one
you're a right
time.
winger.
Like,
From
He
how you
intentionally
dress, from what you look like.
He intentionally voted for leftist one time, and took evidence of that, and just showed him the picture. Like, I voted for the left. What are you talking about? Boom.
Okay, do you know what happens to soy boys that are feminists that have one thing go wrong from their Twitter feed?
They get the crucified. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they get crucified.
yeah, you
So-
see, like, I don't know, I don't understand this. Like, you're viewing this as if it's like a mathematical graph, right? Where if I cross the asymptote of gender, I'm suddenly safe. This is like a
No, I'm
right-wing
not saying, like,
caricature.
I'm not
It's a
like
social
saying fuck
weapon,
tranny,
and
fuck
start
trannies, fuck
using it.
trannies, and suddenly identify as a woman. I'm not going like that. Like, you have to make it look authentic, obviously.
I'm saying don't do that, Phoenix. You're just gonna get hurt in the long run,
This
and
is
it's
the
not.
worst 4D chess
fine.
plan I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Sirp's 4D chess plan was to use political correctness as a way of banning porn.
I'm just gonna
Alright,
declare
but
myself a
there's-
woman
but that was
just
that was like
after
a
I've
really
had something
shitty
nasty
example.
happen to me.
Okay,
That just
okay,
worked
look at this, look
perfectly.
at this. But there's examples where it does make sense though. Like for
Phoenix,
example, you know how they always push abortion, right? You know who statistically commits abortions? People that commit abortions. Just let them not have babies. They're gonna choose to kill their own babies. Like I don't
No,
like
but
the
that
idea of
doesn't
abortion.
work. Okay, and the reason that doesn't work is because of the school system and media. So what happens is liberals don't have children, so you're theoretically right, but what they do is they take children
They
from
turn
conservative
conservative children
families.
into leftists. That's a problem.
Yeah, and they have mass immigration. So
Like,
That's the, but
Like-
mass immigration and their excuses. Oh, but we need more labor. The way to get more labor, you need population rate, is increase the birth rate and let the leftists purge themselves.
no, but
Guess what Japan's doing? They're also importing labor from Korea and Brazil because
Exactly.
they don't have
so
as much
you
children as they need.
increase you increase your own birth rate
How?
and you let the left purge them. Simple. Again, people have to get married again. So, for example, if you want to vote,
how did we get to this
You
in
need
like
to
2
pay
Getting
minutes?
married.
if you want to vote, you need to pay taxes. As a man, you also need to sign up for a draft, or as a woman, you need to have children in order to vote.
How's that incentivize marriage?
'Cause
Why
if a
is this
woman
even
wants to vote,
relevant? None
she
of
has
this
to
will
marry.
happen. None of this will happen without having like actual leaders. This is my entire point. Like we can discuss, oh, we can motivate marriage. This how it's like we don't have power to do that. Like we have to actually get the power first. This is what the left
So
is
how do you
good at.
suggest doing that then? How do you suggest getting to that point though?
By becoming socially mobile, which is what I was saying at the start. There's too much like focusing
But
on
People have been
policies as if that's
proposing
like
that for
some
a
way of
while,
doing
but
this.
no one ever actually took off on it.
Yes, because we're being autistic. Like no one wants to vote for an autistic
But
person.
do you think that you're the first person with your ideas? Like, I don't think I'm the first person with my ideas, right? But, like, that's the thing.
I'm
Somebody
not
always said,
pretending to. I'm not pretending to. I'm just saying, like, if you want to be able to implement any of this, you need to be socially mobile, and that is the thing that the right lacks at the moment. We're a bunch of autistic analysts talking on the internet about things that we
Obviously,
might have
but what's-
influence over in
okay,
future,
okay.
but we don't right
What-
now because we
how-
don't have
what
the
do you
social mobility.
suggest? What can you do in order to make this happen, or at least in part?
I can
That's the
go and
thing.
talk to people in real life and learn social skills. Go and learn social skills.
I mean,
Just
that's
go
not
out
gonna
and
happen.
talk to them.
I've tried.
Well,
I've
I
tried.
mean, it's time to try harder.
No, I literally can't. Like, I medically can't.
No,
so.
you literally can. Like, you can go out to a bar, or you can go wherever. Like, lockdown don't matter. Go and interact with as many people as possible, and eventually you will have, like, through all kinds of social failures, and the left does this as well, through all kinds of failures, you will eventually get good at social interaction, right? Like, for example, when I debate, like, when I do my debates online, like, there's a reason why I will debate constantly on my Facebook, and people think it's really weird, right? And I understand that, but it's because first of all, it gets me good at debate, and second of all, I'm going to need that at some point. Public speaking and being able to articulate your ideas is the single most important skill that a man can have in employment markets, and also like just discussing ideas generally, right? Now, I'm developing this skill, and it's the same with social interaction. We need people who can interact socially, understand the rules of the game, and then through that get into power, and then we can start discussing. We're gonna disincentivize this behavior, and we're gonna incentivize that. Right? There's no
But
sense
the main
discussing
reason
this.
why I'm even discussing what we do at that point is because before we get there, I don't. Because again,
We've
before
had
we take off-
100,000 conversations about this on the right wing web. Like who
Because
cares?
if we don't know what the fuck we're gonna do, right? Then my problem is I don't want us to get to the top and then we tear each other down, and the left gets on top again. But this time they know, they saw what we did, and they're not gonna let it happen again. That's
So
my
this
worry.
is just failure mentality. Like, does anybody actually know what they're going to do with power until they're actually sat in the chair with it? Does
We're not
anyone really think that?
No one knows 100%,
Yeah.
but we can at least exclude some things.
And we've been doing that for years in this end of the internet. There are thousands of streams about this. We've spent plenty of time thinking through the basics. Now we can actually go and implement it.
So the
And it's
plan
just a
is this:
matter
then.
of
Step 1, learn social skills. Step 2, get like a good leader with the same logic and facts, but also a lot of good social skills.
I
which
think people
for some
need to
reason we haven't had
stop
yet.
running away from things like careers in academics, careers in the public service, like careers in these fields that leftists dominate. You have to stop just ceding every single thing to them and hoping that if we go
No,
in the
I
hole,
agree, but how are we gonna do that?
by
Actually,
trying and
yeah,
failing hundreds of
that's
times
very
over.
true. If it's one thing
Like-
that bothers me with like modern YouTube, I can't stand people that like complain about the SJW takeover of
Like, do we have
comments.
to
Well,
find
like, you
somebody
can
who's
always
like
just
a
make your own
perfect
comments.
socially adept child, and we raise him with all the correct facts,
no,
and we
like
teach him, and then he becomes
that's
another
No,
leader?
you
Like,
develop it on your own, like every other human being on the planet. Like you don't just like rise up through a corporation because you're really good at like I don't know programming, right? That might be an aspect of it, but it's much more about being a team player. It's much more about being able to articulate your ideas. It's much more about being able to understand where people are coming from and being compassionate with them, rather than just telling them blanketly the facts. This is something that I struggle from as well. Like I'll just tell people blanketly the facts, and often it will
Just
just
admit-
like like destroy them.
okay,
You
so
need to be able
let's
to learn
say
how to do this to get anywhere.
Okay, so let's say you manage to get perfect social skills, right? Like I know that's impossible. to be
It's like an
perfect.
RPG stat. Like what does that even mean?
I'm just trying to simplify this so we don't argue like, well, you're good at this part of social skills or this type of intelligence. I'm not trying to debate that. That's not. So that's I'm just keeping it simple. Let's say you hypothetically have perfect social skills. What's next? You just convince everyone to vote for you. All right.
You know like the structure of power, and then you exploit it to get into a position where you could get power. And if God wants you to be there, you'll get it. If you don't, then you don't. You've got social skills, and that will serve you in life regardless.
like
But we also need to do it soon because we can't just keep trying and failing. We need to try and succeed
well,
in the
no,
first
but
few
we
times
haven't
'cause we don't
tried,
have a
and
lot.
that's kind of the issue. Like
That's my point.
I know personally, and this may sound weird, but just interacting with people online, like who I've never met before in unstructured situations, has made me a lot better at social interaction in real life, and it's helped social anxiety. Also, I've just gotten a lot better at presenting things and public speaking and conveying ideas and stuff like that. So, I mean, it has helped me out a lot in my career, actually. But I think, like, people just need to start. Like, I get that it's all paused. I get the corporate world's difficult. But, and I can even see this from my university course. Because I'm doing a master's course and we're doing like discussion boards and stuff, and I'll do posts that are obviously not right wing in nature, but kind of present the other side at least as if I'm just doing it for an intellectual thing, and I'll get people who go, "Oh, I never thought about it this way," that sort of thing, and they might not have ever been exposed to that sort of stuff before, and I think that does good.
Yeah, another example from my own
exposure.
life, right? Like another example from my own life, right? Like I'm doing a graduate degree in computer science, and I took a law module because I figured it'd be useful to get some sort of humanities like diversity, like diversity in the masters. And because I've spent years doing YouTube, spent years doing talks on YouTube, and years debating, I'm crushing it, right? Like nobody else in the group really has like there are some with skills. Like there was this Pakistani girl who worked for Facebook who was good at it, right? But besides that, everyone else just stays silent, and we all like it'll be the two of us usually debating back and forth about the particular situations in the law, right? And this impressed the professor to the point where one week she cancelled the seminar because I think it was something to do with the assignments not being very good from a lot of people, right? And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. And then she emails me like 10 minutes later. It's like, hey, it doesn't actually matter about those guys. Do you want it just to be the two of us and we'll just do the seminar, just the two of us? And I was like, no, that's fine. But like that is the power of being able to interact with people on their own level. Because I introduced myself as somebody who was interested in the humanities. I made arguments based on the material she set. And this is something that, of course, satisfies the academic because she's seeing that her students are like actually doing what she wants, which so few of them actually do. And this is the power of understanding the mindset of either people in power or people around you. If you do the things that they want, if you have the particular qualities developed that they want, then they're going to pay attention to you, regardless of whether or not you're a reactionary or whether or not you're whatever right-wing ideology, right? If you develop that, then it won't matter. So that's why I'm telling you guys, like, we can discuss political policy to the ends of the earth, and we have, right? But if we can't communicate that, if we can't interact with human beings, then it's just like an autistic waste of time.
Well, like, I think if you go into, I don't know, like something like market research or marketing or whatever, then you can start tilting your reports in a particular direction, and you can have influence that way. So I think the idea is you get competent about it, and you just try to push these things in like a non-political context, even. And I think that the surrender of all that and the, like, you don't have to be don't be abrasive, don't be a spurg. I find personally that a lot of people agree with our ideas. They've just been conditioned, if they hear certain trigger words, to go berserk. So I will get people who are even liberals who will, if you avoid words, concede that we've given too much to like immigrants culturally and stuff like that. It's just, you have to kind of be able to sound out someone and know how to reach them and what their worldview is and that sort of thing. And I just think a lot of people don't understand that.
The way I try to reach liberals is I try to, well, in some ways, I guess I could say my speech is a bit emotional when I reach liberals. Well, like I read Mark Fisher, I think his name is, but I also try to understand from like a Marxist perspective. But like I'll reach them from the left, and I say, okay, well, how can I adopt this from a rightist perspective? But I'll, at the same time, try to appeal to them and say, okay, well, here's why importing labor devalues labor, devalues your wages, and even Bernie Sanders, right, understands this and was very critical of it, and why you should be critical of it too.
Anyway, I've got to go pray. So thanks a lot for having me on, Arjun. I really appreciate
Thanks
it.
for being on, man. Always glad to have you.
No problem. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again sometime soon.
Sure, sounds good to me. God bless.
Yeah. God bless you.
God bless.
See ya.
Thanks.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
think this is maybe a logical place to stop. I have some work and cleaning I need to do. So, yeah, thanks for coming on, guys.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks to you, Argent. It's been very entertaining.
Okay, everybody, so I hope you enjoyed the stream. God bless.